Okay, let's look at this class attribute, this chapter. Using the class attribute, the HTML class attribute is used to define equal styles for many elements to the same class name. There's all HTML elements to the same class attribute will get the same style. Thus, we can provide the same style to many other elements. Here, for example, we can apply this same style with the class attribute to these div elements. Here, cities. The class name is following this period. The dot cities means that is class name, and the style is defined here. Background color is black and the color is white, and the margin is 20 pixels, heading is 20 pixels. And that class name, cities, may be used in many places for different div here, for different div element here, and it's the same style we can apply. Let's look at the result. It's the same style is applied. Okay, you can try by yourself. Same style. Just simply let's try to change instead of black, about red color. Then that color will be applied to many div elements. Okay, let's move to the next. Using the class attribute on inline element, also that is possible. Previous div, that was a block element, as we learned already. And also we can use this class attribute on inline elements. For example, span here. And following that period note means that is class name. And that will be used in this span element, like this. And let's look at. And this dot note, that class name here, that style defined here, that will be applied to here and to here. Also, we can look at other example. Without this span, we can see the same result. Generally, we can apply this class name to any element name, not just span. If we want to specify, and that should be applied only to that span element, then we can specify that element name here. But to apply and to use generally, then we can eliminate that. There's just period and class name. That will be enough. Okay. Okay, let's look at this tip. The class attribute can be used on any HTML element. The class name is case sensitive. That means uppercase name and the lowercase name, they are different. Let's look at here again. Okay, here we use this one. Let's try to change the bottom one. Instead of the lowercase n note, how about capital or uppercase, then you can see that note, that class name is not here, and depending upon the character, whether that is lowercase or uppercase, there's no uppercase class name here, thus that is using just the default display color. Okay. And let's look at the following one. Okay, select elements with a specific class. There's, as we learned already, generally we can apply this class name, and here in CSS, to select elements with a specific class, write a period character followed by the name of the class, as we used already, like this. Then we can apply to these H2 elements, and we can see this applied style. And in this case, single element, for example here, HTML elements can have more than one class name. Each class name must be separated by a space, like this. There may be different style, and each style is using different name, class name, and if we are enumerating those class names here, then those related styles are applied to this element. Let's look at this example. One class name .city means that is the city class, and the main class that is a class name, and here for this H2 London, this one is using two class name. One is city, another one is main, and city is using the style as defined here, and the main is using the style here that is related to the alignment, text alignment. That should be centered like this. Because that only that is centered like this. The others are using just the left alignment that is default. Different texts can share same class. Same class name can be used by other element name here. Different texts like H2 and P can have the same class name and thereby share the same style. That is the main characteristic of the class, and that is a little bit different from ID. And here class name can be used in many elements because they can share the same style. Let's look at this. This style, the class name is city, can be applied to this H2 element also, or P element. They will have the same style like this. And that class attribute, that name, class name can be used in the JavaScript, even though we couldn't learn this JavaScript yet. Later, after midterm exam, we learn about it. And this one is HTML element, and that class name, and so on. Those are being accessed by the JavaScript, and we can provide some dynamic. Okay, let's look at this JavaScript, how that class attribute can be used in JavaScript. Even though we couldn't learn this JavaScript yet, later after midterm exam we learn about it. At this moment you don't need to worry about this one. Just for reference, how this class attribute and class name can be used. Later, for dynamic user interface, we can access that element to this method, with this function, and with this class name. That is JavaScript, and this is very similar to the C language and very similar to the Python. And let's look at this application. Here, let's focus on this city, the name, class name city, and that class name city can be used in this JavaScript. This whole section is related to the JavaScript. Here, this is document object. Later we learn about it, and that is the get elements by class name. That is the method belonging to that object, and we can access that city to that class name here, then we can apply some dynamic application here. Here, this one is hiding. Thus, if I am clicking this one, that means one-click event handling program is this JavaScript program. And if I am clicking this, those will be hidden like this. Okay, let's move to the next. You can try others. ID attribute. That is very similar to the class, but that is different. Think about your student ID and think about your class. In your class, for example, this class, web programming class, many students they are attending. Each student has his or her own ID name, ID, and that ID, student ID, for example, that should be unique, and we learn about it. Let's follow this first. The ID attribute specifies a unique ID for an HTML element. The value must be unique within the HTML document. And the ID value can be used by CSS and the JavaScript to perform certain tasks for the element with a specific ID value. To differentiate from class, we are using this hash character. And if some ID name is following after this hash character, then we can assume that is ID name. For example, here, hash character, and that is ID name for that, for this style. And we can apply this style. This is the style definition. The ID name is this, and we can use this one in our other element here. And let's look at the real example here. My header, ID name my header, that can be applied here. My header. That simply that color is light blue here. If that is using a class instead of ID, then it is not working like this. But if previous one was that is being changed to class like this, if I am changing that hash character to this period, then that means that following one is class name, and this one is correct. Then we can apply that style here. Let's look at this tip. The ID attribute can be used on any HTML element. The ID value is case sensitive. Similarly, like the class name, that value, like that, this ID value is also case sensitive. Then our main concern is, what's the main difference between class and ID? Sometimes we are in confusion because they have some characteristic, but if we don't know exactly about it, then we can intermix and mingle them together in a web page. And let's look at, anyhow, we'll learn about it. An HTML element can only have one unique ID. That is important. That belongs to that single element, while a class name can be used by multiple elements. Let's look at this example first, and let's discuss more about it. Here, my header, as we learned, this one is following that hash character, thus this one is ID name. This city, that is class name. And we can use that the attribute here, ID and class, depending upon that. And we can apply that style here. But let's try to change. And here class is using city. And here, instead of class, how about changing it to ID? And ID, that should be unique. I am making that wrong intentionally to understand better. Okay, ID. And if I am running this one, there's no defined style. There's the default style will be applied. Thus we can see this one. And here, this one is ID, name city. There's here that should be changed to ID. Still, let's try to make it wrong intentionally. Then you can see this one is showing correctly. Because of this, sometimes there is some confusion. Because that is running well. It seems running well. But when we are checking you to the HTML validator or CSS validator that is provided by the World Wide Web Consortium, and later we learn about it, if that is warning, there is a warning message that is giving some warning message about it, because that ID that should be unique, but here that this ID can be used here in different places. That means that is not being used uniquely. That's wrong. But the result is correct. It seems to be correct. But when we are checking to validator, something wrong. And the wrong error warning message will be shown. Later we look at. Okay. Anyhow, let's move to the next. To this ID, we can provide some bookmark. HTML bookmarks are used to allow readers to jump to specific parts of a web page. If that web page is so long, then we can jump directly to that specific part. Bookmarks can be useful if your web page is very long. To make a bookmark, you must first create the bookmark and then add a link to it. In that case, we are using the anchor tag, anchor element for hyperlinking. Okay, let's look at the real example here. We should attach that bookmark. To this ID name, we can create a bookmark. And the ID name is C4. Then we can we can link to that bookmark. That means we can jump to that specific part. Here we can jump to chapter 4 directly. And here, this is the way. We are using anchor tag for hyperlinking, and instead of the URL, simply we are using that ID name here. Hashtag, hash character, and that ID name is following there. And let's look at this real example. Then we can understand better. Let's assume this is so long web page. And for the convenience, we can provide this bookmark capability. If I am clicking this one, then we can jump to there directly. And let's go back again. And if I am clicking this one, we can go deeply and we can go directly to that place that is called bookmark. And we can use this bookmark with this ID name also, because that is being introduced here. Also, or similarly, in the JavaScript, we can use this ID attribute, the ID name that can be accessed. In that case, we are using this get element by ID, and that inside that in these parentheses, that is the ID name. Let's look at this real example here. ID name, my header. As soon as I am clicking this one, the display result, that is the JavaScript function, and that will be executed here. And this one is showing other content here that is described here. Inner HTML. Inner HTML means that content. We can change that. Okay, let's move to next after closing some open tabs. Okay, you can try. And probably this iframe, that is the final chapter for the second week lecture. Okay, there's for this one, I will show you some example later with our web portal, name portal. Okay, you can see this one is occupying some space, and we can browsing. We can do some browsing here. We can scroll, but the others not being changed. This one is using iframe. This area is iframe area, and how we can use this. Let's look at this iframe syntax first. On HTML, iframe is defined to the iframe tag. This one is HTML iframe tag, iframe element, and syntax is like this. With the source attribute, the value for that is URL, and the URL we can access that contents, and that will be shown here inside of that iframe space. The iframe space can be defined with this height and width. The size can be defined with this height. That unit is pixel, 200 pixel height and 300 pixel width. Okay, let's try. Here, you can change. Simply you can change, then you can see the difference. You can see this one. Okay, also in other way, with the CSS style, we can provide the style. Instead of this width and height, that is related to the style, but instead of this attribute, we can use CSS style. That is more recommendable. Usually validator, HTML and CSS validator, that is recommending this way. Instead of that way, the height 200 pixel with 300 pixel, like this. Also we can change in the same way. Okay, iframe, think about that iframe. In terms of design, we can use that borderline, or we don't need to use that borderline. We can remove the borderline. For example, here border none. That means we are not using borderline here. Then we can see that our simple design. And with the CSS, we can also change the size, style, and the color of the iframes border like this. And let's look at this real example here. And the borderline, instead of 2 pixel, about 7 pixel, and the solid line here, and the red color, instead of red color, we can try to the blue color like this. There's iframe to show that iframe area. We can use this design related to that iframe with this style. Sometimes we need to use the target. Okay, this target is we learned already in the anchor tag, A tag. Here the target can be frame, and in that case, the frame name should be attached here with this name attribute. We can assign some name to this specific iframe. Then we can show the brought result after hyperlinking. The result can be shown here in the target frame like this. Okay, if I'm clicking this one, then w3schools.com's new content will be brought, but to where? To here. As we specified here, the target should be iframe A. iframe A, this iframe has the name iframe A, that is this area, and new contents will be shown there like this. Okay, here it's time to look at the real example using the name portal. Okay, here let's try to type wopen.com. That is the name portal which I built already. Okay, we just learned iframe, and let's look at how that can be used in real application. And for example, let's look at the real name portal that is wopen.com. Here you can type in wopen.com or wopen.net, and this one is the example using that iframe. Let's look at this name portal first. This one is showing. Okay, let's look at this person who is today's person, Pablo di Sarasate. He's famous violinist and composer. We can see many contents, actually video clips and images here, multimedia data. And to show these video clips, I am using some class name and iframe, and for this image tag I am using, and many video clips are there, and I am using many iframes. Let's look at the source code here. To look at the source code, in the first one, I will show in the editing mode. I simply put in that image here in this way, image tag, and this one is using class name C3, and the iframe, this one is using class name C, and the source that is a YouTube video clip, and the others are using also class name C in the iframe. And let's look at the whole source code. To your mouse button right side, if you are clicking the view page source, then you can see this one. Seems to be still I am using image here, the class name C3, and to show this video clip, I am using the same class name C here for this iframe. And also there are many images about the coronavirus status, and this one is showing some video clips that is live channel, and I want to show this one. This one is containing some web page, and we look at this one. Here, this one is showing the current real-time status and the statistics about the coronavirus in the world, the infected people, the number of that, and the victims. And in Korea, here the number and the victim, the number of victims here. And in other countries also it is showing that Italy and China, and this one is the code for that country. And to show this one, and I will, okay, please keep in mind the color of that border line and the thickness. I am using different class name, and that is C6, and let's look at the source code for that. And similarly, we can see the source code is the right button of your mouse, and let's focus on that. Style here, I am using that embedded web page that is using this iframe C6, class name C6, and the 7 pixel solid, and the border color is red color. That's it. In terms of the iframe, we observed some real application to the name portal wopen.com, and to this one I want to finalize the lecture for the second week, and I wrap up the lecture here.